appreciate good music.
Welcome to Barefoot Waterskiing, waterskiing's ultimate rush, where human and machine combine as one to perform the impossible, walking on water. Barefoot skiing needs flat water, and flat water means early starts. But for these wetsuit warriors, just preparing for another day's training requires special planning.
Every skier has their own motivation and their own goals, and I think what we get to the skiers from the very low level to the elite level is to set a bit of a goal for themselves.
Like, you know, some people like their footy and some people like their netball. I just love to go water skiing, and I'll do it all day long if I can.
Barefooting in a whole, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it before, it's a family orientated sport.
When looking back now, it's about the journey.
There's only one thing that'll make you get there, in my opinion, is the love of it. You've got to love it more than anything else there is.
Well, this is a hard sport because you've got to take a lot of knocks.
Whereas traditional skiers use skis almost 2 meters long to skim across the surface, these athletes are displacing water on less than 20 square centimeters of bare skin. The only way to stay up is to go fast, very fast. Speeds in excess of 70 kilometers per hour or 44 miles an hour in the old scale are typical for barefoot water skiers. Competition barefoot water skiing involves 3 separate events. The Tricks event is the premier event in which skiers get 2 15-second runs to show off their arsenal of tricks and maneuvers. Each trick is judged according to difficulty. In the slalom event, skiers cross the boat's wash on one foot as many times as possible in 15 seconds. Again, they get 2 chances to do this. One pass is done forwards and one backwards. The final event is the jump event. Skiers can jump as far as 30 meters, clearing heights of almost 5 meters, landing with such force their legs buckle and they ride briefly on their buttocks before standing again. This is the modern 3-event sport we see today, but it wasn't always that way. Barefoot water skiing was officially started in 1947 by the Americans, but it was the Australians who took it to new heights.
Yeah, the TV commercial came about. Cleveland, Canada contacted me regarding Timex watches and asked me did I think I'd be able to strap a watch on my foot and torture test it.
Watch now as Gary helps us in another Timex torture test. Barefooting at 43 miles an hour. These are called tumble turns.
I didn't seem to have a problem with what they'd asked. They tried somebody in the States and they hadn't been able to do it, so they flew out and we made the commercial.
It's still running. The Timex Marlin watch.
Well, me getting involved in barefoot water skiing was purely by accident. I saw some other guys trying it and thought, gee, that looked like a lot of fun, and it just went from there. I think the fact that it was a tough sport motivated me. I've always been sort of martial arts and things like that, and the toughness of the sport helped motivate me to get involved.
They don't come any tougher than Gary Barton. This water skiing wizard from Maitland in New South Wales Hunter Valley was a barefoot water skiing innovator. Gary and others such as Erwin Luthiger, Jack Murray, Ray Layton, John Hollands and Ron Marks were instrumental in evolving the sport in Australia. A true Australian great of the sport, Gary is still considered among the world's best. His halcyon days preceded the inception of world titles, but his pioneering innovations ensure his legend.
I was the first one to invent the backwards dupe start, purely because we were having so many ties in competitions in Australia. Well, the backward start came about by accident. Actually, the day or two after I learned to barefoot forwards, I almost got tangled up and came out with the rope behind me, upside down and planed. And then years later, when I was trying to do a backward start, I thought, well, I at least know I can get up and plane, and most people were having trouble with that at that stage. So we cut the surfboard down, a mate that used to drive the boat for me, and I lay on the surfboard and got a lot of bumps in the head from it, but finally learnt to stand up, and then didn't tell anyone. It was a couple of years. I think I had the trick to myself for a couple of years before anyone else worked out how to do it.
A backwards 1 foot stand-up. This is very difficult because Gary must reach a speed of 40 miles per hour before he's able to place his foot into the water.
And, I learned to start backwards, and then I learned to start backwards on 1 foot.
Look at that.
And I thought that you had to be able to start backwards as you could start forwards. So.
You can appreciate how fearless Gary is when you consider that he did this trick sober.
Yeah, well, I guess I started in a pair of rubber shorts. The first equipment came about was a necessity. Got a diving wetsuit, which tore to pieces, and then designed some leg straps from the old cycling days and put those on, and then we put a collar on that seemed to work better, and then we put buoyancy and flotation, and it just grew from there. I came up with the old electrician coming out of me with putting some electrical conduit down the side of the handle so that the handle would stay rigid enough that you could pick it up again. And this was actually the latest model before I stopped skiing that I used in competitions. The first ones were wooden, old broom handles, which I used to cut off where I worked and no one liked. And this was the ultimate in those days, and I'm sure nowadays it's gone a lot farther.
Now watch as the boat moves away from the wharf and Gary prepares himself for...
Gary Barton was a true skiing showman who had the skills to back up his exhibitionist nature and helped inspire other skiing legends to follow.
Different winds affect different days, so today we've got a headwind for jumping, so I'm looking forward to it.
Meet Brett Wing, 50-year-old professional skier at SeaWorld on the Gold Coast. A true skiing legend, he's been there and done it all. He is the Don Bradman of barefoot waterskiing. And like the Don, it is likely no one will ever surpass his achievements.
I learnt in 1967 on a Christmas holiday. We went to the Hawkesbury River. The first day I didn't get up on 2 skis. Tried again the next day and got up, and that was it. There was no looking back from there. Just been skiing ever since, 1967.
Now Brett Wing, world champion. He goes through his paces as he does 3 teeth, 3 necks.
I got to a point where I'd won sub-junior titles, 3 of those and 3 junior titles, and it was time to go to the men's. And I remember vividly to the day, I was 15 years old and knew I was going into the seniors the next year and had idols that were in the seniors, and I thought to myself, I can knock these guys off.
Rope on toe with reverse. Watch this toe 180 front, back, back, front. Toe 180 1 foot, reverse. Now the only skier in the world executing the exciting line step front, back, back, front, as he recovers holding the handle one hand.
When I say idols, just, you know, they were the guys that were setting the benchmark. Obviously Gary Barton was the man for 4 years. He won 4 Australian titles. He really took the sport to another level. He was the first guy in the sport to actually get out there and train hard. But I remember thinking to myself, I want to be the best in the world at this sport. And I was 15 years old, and from that day on till the time I retired from barefooting, I trained really hard, pretty much 7 days a week.
We'll be back in a sec, John. We're just looking at Brett Wing.
And that hard training paid off. In 1978, at the first ever World Barefoot Waterski Championships in Canberra, Brett created history by winning the world overall title. But amazingly, he won that title without winning the tricks event, his premier event. After falling in the final, as seen in this original footage, he was beaten by another Australian skier, Sharon Steckenberg.
Sharon Steckenberg, he's a great skier and he was pushing me real hard, and definitely there was some rivalry there, but yeah, with good respect for each other, and he tried hard. It was good.
Frank, well, Brett, you've just watched John Stecklenberg's run. What do you think?
He'll take out the tricks. He'll be the world trick champion with that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Were you a bit disappointed in your second run?
Extremely disappointed. All my practice for the last, say, 12 months, I don't think I've missed that trick all the time. And in the eliminations, I missed it, and in the finals, I missed it. So obviously, I got something wrong with that that I'm going to have to iron out.
The thing that drove me, I think, with learning pioneering tricks was I got to a point where my attitude was nothing's impossible, so I'll try anything. I did a wake helicopter from a racked position. It was very close to introducing it into a trick run, but it was just too risky. It had to be my first trick because you can't wrap while you're going along barefooting. Dad was my coach, and he was the driving force behind me.
Some of those backward starts there, you definitely needed little buds and sods, you know. Yes, that's good. And how do you find those Neptune seas? I think they're the best.
Basically, was the first person to introduce front to back 180s into trick runs. There were some guys doing them in the US, and a guy here at SeaWorld, Wally Morris, he was probably the only guy in Australia that I know of that was performing that. And I had a buddy I used to compete against, Alan Moffat. We used to talk back and forth about what we're doing, and he was in Adelaide, and he said, "You'll never guess what I've just learned." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "A front to back toe turn." You're kidding me. I didn't think. I thought it was one of those tricks that just wasn't possible to do. I was a trick skier. I could do them on the trick ski, but barefooting, you can't do a front to back toe turn and just catch an edge or whatever. Anyway, the next day I had to go out and try it, and I made my second one. And I'm thinking, what have I been doing all these years? This trick is not as hard as I thought.
Hello everyone, we're glad you've joined us for 1 hour of exciting water ski action.
But I'm fortunate enough to have been able to turn it into a career.
Brett Wang, most consider him to be the finest water skier in the world with or without water skis.
There's no slowing down just yet either, so it's great to be able to get out of bed, think, righto, I'm going to work, I'm going to have a ski. I guess you got to always have the passion to be able to be a water skier, and I'm lucky that I've still got it, and I'm lucky that I've got my body is taking care of me. I don't think the falls are even the hardest part about it. I think just learning the long hard road is probably one of the hardest bits about it, and you've just got to have focus and have a goal, but you'll reach those goals if you want to. I think I'd like to be remembered as a fair competitor and maybe a nice bloke.
I want to put my footing up to 63, thanks.
Who would have thought that a shy, quietly spoken Sydney suburbs girl would go on to be a multi-world champion in barefoot waterskiing?
I think back then, there was probably not a lot of kids skiing. I mean, you'd see the odd kid skiing, but I think it was more of a family sport, and I think back then, there wasn't sort of a lot of barefoot tournaments, or people didn't know a lot about tournaments, so it was more the fact of once you learned to ski and you seen a barefooter sort of going past, you thought, wow, I've got to do that.
In a testosterone-dominated sport, Australia has also produced its fair share of female champions. Kim Lampard is arguably its Dawn Fraser, winning no less than 4 world overall barefoot titles. No other skier, male or female, has won more world overall titles than Kim. And just like Dawn, Kim has remained humble about her sporting success.
I don't think there was an age that I thought I had talent. I think how it came about for me was that I'd learnt to barefoot. Friends that also sort of went up to the river on the weekends, heard of a training school for kids to go and learn tricks and things. So I attended a training school in the school holidays, which is a week-long camp, and that weekend there was a tournament, so I went in the tournament, entered it, and I won it. So it was from then that I sort of took the interest in competing, and then they gave you a tournament calendar, and from there I just sort of went to each tournament and progressed a bit better.
Kim Lampard's first bar.
But then as I progressed and I got into competition, then my parents would take me either 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd get up to get to Windsor maybe once or twice a week.
G'day, this is Kimmy Lampard. She's 14 years of age, and I believe this season, Kim, you've broken every women's world record. You must be a pretty good skier, so we look forward to going out and seeing what you can do on the water.
I guess I was too young. I did have the opportunity at about age 16 to go overseas, but it was again probably the thought of leaving your family. I mean, I actually had left school and was working to pay for my skiing, so I guess it was more who would take care of the expenses. It was more mum and dad that took care of that.
Lampard is under no illusions. Barefoot water skiing, despite the timing, strength and skill required to master it, is not a high-profile sport. Her 4 world titles haven't brought her any financial return, but then she was never looking for any.
Some of the injuries that I've had over the years, I remember doing toe turns, and every time I'd sort of spin, my shoulder would flick up in the air, and eventually I dislocated my shoulder, so it would constantly pop out all the time. So I had wires put into my wetsuit to try and hold it in. What drove me through all these hard falls and knocks, I guess, along the way was the fact that you wanted to win. I'm a competitive person, but I only look to do my best. If I do my best, then I'm happy with that. If I win, then that's a bonus. I guess that I wanted to push myself to do better, and once I won 1 world title, I thought, maybe I could do this again. So you keep pushing yourself through the falls and learning new tricks just to progress that bit further to see if you can win the next one.
The next final skier was Kimmy Lampard of Australia, and after hearing how well Debbie had gone, Kim knew too that she'd have to go right out to hold her world champion title. It was clear to everyone that Kim was really trying her hand for as many extra points as she can.
People generally felt that the greatest competition would have come from overseas, but in fact it came within Australia. There was Debbie Pugh and Bronwyn McCaskill, Colleen Wilkinson before her, but I never really competed with her. But Bronnie and Debbie and I were both very competitive and pushed one another, and either one of us would come first, second or third in every event. And then of course you had the overseas, competition like Laurie Powell, and there was the girls from Great Britain at the time. It was probably Debbie and Bron that pushed me the most, and we probably pushed each other.
Debbie Pugh was looking to better her position, and then she knew she had to get a good score.
I guess, looking at it now as a middle-aged woman, looking back I sort of think, wow, look what I did. It was pretty impressive. Back then I guess you took it for granted, but I'd like to be thought of as a great competitor, someone, a good sportsman or sportswoman, someone who had the courage to give it a go, and I really don't know what else. I don't know what else to say, sorry.
Kim needn't say anything. Her skiing achievements say it all. Behind all great competitions are the forgotten heroes. In barefoot waterskiing, it's the judges and officials. Meet Brian Price, member of the World Barefoot Council and world-rated judge.
I skied for quite a number of years in national competitions and state competitions. never quite made it to world level as a skier, and then moved into the official side of the sport, into administration and judging of competitions. At a World Championships, you have one judge from each of those 3 regions in the boat, so that's a demonstration of fairness in itself, so that you've got 3 individual representations judging a skier.
No wonder your chest was sore.
Yeah. There's a number of tasks. You also need to look after the ropes for the skiers, handle changes. You need to record down the skier instructions in what they require as the rate of accelerations, whether it's a fast, medium acceleration. Also have to record if they're going to do any preparatory tricks. So this is all done before the skier leaves the dock.
Could I do toe up, please? Medium until I'm outside the wake, and then medium fast through to 69, soft side, please.
And then once you're on the water, you then record using symbols. There's a separate symbol for each trick, and you use a symbol to record exactly what the skier does as they progress through their pass. Good skiing, Cameron. I paid everything, no issue with any of the first pass. Got close to time, so you're very right on the buzzer when the hooter went. And the 360, good rotation through the 360, so had no issue in passing that. Put that one up the front if you like. We'll just do a test, Ash, and just see it's all working okay. Ready? Yep. In slalom, similarly, we have a means of recording whether it's a 1 foot cross, the straight line records a 1 foot cross, and a squiggly line that signifies a 2 foot cross. The skiers of today, what they can execute on their bare feet is just blows you out of the water with all the toe turn tricks, the flips and surface turns. Fantastic compared to back when I was skiing.
Lean Dog Bowers, Team USA.
There is the opportunity to travel with World Championships and region championships, and that's something that I've got a lot of enjoyment out of the sport, seeing the world through the passion I love in barefoot water skiing. I've always rated myself as hard in my assessments, but very, very fair. I'd also hope to think that I'd be recognised for some of the innovations that I've developed through my training of other judges.
The legacy of Brian's judging has permeated barefoot water skiing in Australia and internationally. While his commitment to the rulebook might have made him unpopular on occasion, it has ultimately earned him great respect as a world-rated judge and, more importantly, raised the standard of both judges and skiers on a global scale.
Straight line, one of the most important things about barefooting is holding a straight line. So it's constant speed, straight line, and looking for obstacles in the water. When I judge, I don't look at the piece of paper at all. One of the things I find with judging is that you need to get into the boat with the skiers in training so you get to know what they're doing to be a good judge. You know, one of the hardest things is people who come from states that don't have that many good skiers, and those judges turn up to a national, and all of a sudden you've got these skiers that are doing tricks that these people have never seen on the water. So they've got to be educated, you've got to watch videos. The scariest thing is jumping in a boat and not knowing who your skiers are. It's harder than judging driving. You've got to concentrate. Concentration level's a lot higher. You've got to do what the skier wants you to do within a certain tolerance. And the straight line, you know, people might say, well, that must be pretty easy. But believe me, the best drivers in the world can't drive a straight line on some courses. You know, it's just the way the shape of the banks are, whether it's in a lake. It just depends.
He's a great jumper, this guy, Frank.
Well, the two big changes in my time is inverted jumping, from standard style jumping to inverted style jumping. And then the high poles for skiing made a lot of difference. Boom bars have always been around, but probably in the last 15 years they've become a lot more streamlined, easy to use. which makes them, they're on every boat. Internationally, the sport it's still Australia, America. We now have South Africa in this decade. We have South Africa as a very strong country.
Wait for that race to come tight. Now there he goes with that backwards.
Starts was before my time. I never competed in starts. But as far as timing goes, yes, in late sort of mid-80s, the timing went from 20 seconds to 15 seconds for a trick and slalom run, which actually made it good for the sport because the sites, a lot of the sites that we have today couldn't handle 20-second runs for length. What makes it hard? Probably the cost of the sport for the average person. You need a boat that goes fast, you need guidance.
If you're on the boat, then you're in charge of your little world then, right? So start, maybe trying to help more, or start keeping an eye on your rope, or, you got to just be more aware.
You can learn yourself, but you can save a lot of falls by going with people that know more than you do. I think you have to have quite a bit of money to make it to the top. You can become good at the sport, but to be an elite sportsman in barefooting, yeah, you need a fair bit of backing, like a lot of money. See them come from little cheeky teenagers to mature 16-year-old, how they change in 3 years, and the way they think and the way they do things, and you really see them grow up, and that's a good part of the whole system.
Dodd became heavily involved in the sport. He started off skiing at Esperance. When we shifted into Perth, he skied in the WA team, got into the WA team and skied in '74 at his first nationals. I think he was 9 years old at the time. Then he gave the sport away for a few years, but then came back into it in '84. He had the advantage of seeing all of the people that have come through the Australian ranks. I think he was the most gifted.
The love of barefoot water skiing doesn't come any larger than through the heart of Graham Dwyer, member of the World Barefoot Council, former skier and mentor to son Dodd Dwyer, a national and world-ranked barefoot water skier of the 90s.
Valiantly to get our guys to go inverted, to try it, but nobody wanted to initially. But eventually the writing was on the wall. Everybody could see that Mike Seipel won the jump easily. So everybody started to go inverted then. Dodd held the world record for years with the inverted style. The biggest contribution I made to the technical side of the sport in terms of the skier's ability was that I advocated speeds, and now we see speeds of another 10 or more Ks higher than that all the top skiers use. The next advancement was that we went from a triangular system of measurement.
A reader who positions these sights, it's like a gun sight, onto this spot where he or she considers the skier has landed.
Which was quite clumsy and fairly inefficient, working off the beach or the bank of the river, to where it's all done now with a computer, and the jump distances subsequently came down.
Now it's really easy, you just film it and it goes on the screen, and we've got the course plotted so we know how far apart everything is out there. When the jumper lands on the screen, you click on them and then you watch it back and you slow-mo it, and you move it forward and back until you find out exact point they hit the water. You click on it and it tells you a distance. You don't have to work it out.
Yeah, the physical attributes for barefooting, I think, are decided advantage for, it's a power-weight ratio, and you usually find it's one sport where the shorter, compacter person usually performs better than the taller person. There have been, as always in any sport, there have always been exceptions to the rule. The reason people come to barefooting, I think, is that people see it sportsmen see it as a test, and it's something that not everybody can do.
Every sport has its freakish talents who display skill beyond comprehension. Names like Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps and Lance Armstrong come to mind. Barefoot Waterskiing has John Penney. In 1994, the young, loquacious and highly technical theorist showed the world that he was not all talk. Despite injuries and run-ins with the judges leading into the final days of the championships, John blew away his competition and won the world overall title. Apart from Brett Wing, no other skier has won the world overall barefoot waterski title since. This unbelievably driven skier did years of training here at the Molonglo River in Canberra.
Well, 94 Worlds was a really weird situation, in fact, that I went to the 92 Worlds ready to win it, and I hurt my knee pretty bad in the last practice jump on the day of the last warm-up and wrenched my knee, and I nearly pulled out. About 7 tournaments, I broke the world record about 5 or 6 times in a row, just bang, bang, bang. I had a dislocated shoulder. It was dislocating in and out all the time, and I knew I needed surgery, and I was wearing a special harness to hold it in. If ever I fell in forward slalom or jumping, that would fall out of place.
Despite the freezing waters, John's determination to be the best saw him develop an exceptional ability to multiple turn on the water. John's skills were so freakish, there were no standards for his tricks to be measured against.
Well, I got to the Worlds that year, and this is the day before it starts, basically, and the world body went in there and reviewed all my world records, and they found that our laws, or how we were judging it over here, because it was pretty cutting edge what I was doing, didn't comply with the rule book. So they knocked all my world records on the head and they didn't pass them. And then they said also, and by the way, if you go and do that pass at the Worlds, you won't get credit for it. This is the day before.
So how did you feel with that run, John?
Fantastic, thanks Glenn. Yeah, it was a great run in the first round. I set myself up to put myself into the top seed, and having all those great trick runs like those Americans coming at me was pretty nerve-wracking.
First place, world champion, men's tricks, John Penney, Australia.
So I started skiing at the age of 5. On 2 skis, I was 6, I was on 1 ski, 7 years old, I started the barefoot. Tommy Jeffers, a lot of people wouldn't know, but he was the guy that basically got me on that when I was at that age of 16, down the river nearly every afternoon, from sort of 3 in the afternoon till 6, day after day after day in those early days. Yeah, just the fact that I was out there always doing something. I was always learning something. I was either on a trick ski, slalom ski, jump skis. You know, on an average Saturday, I'd go out and do a barefoot practice session in the morning, and then hit the slalom course for a while, and then after breakfast we'd do a bit of tricking if the water got a bit rough, and if there's a boat crew of people heading up to the jump, you know, I'd jump in on that too and have a couple of goes. So I just loved doing it the whole lot.
The rulebook literally had to be rewritten to keep up with him. In 1994, he was worlds apart from any other skier. Many say he still is. John used his 1994 success as a springboard to set up a highly successful barefoot waterski school.
I just went to training schools. I went to Brett Wing's when I was about 12 and 13 for a week's training school, and and he taught me a bunch of stuff in a short space of time. Just one thing led to another, and I was always 4th, 5th, 6th. I wasn't very good really in those early days. I was nicknamed an uncoordinated vegetable at a training school when I was about 12. So no way. I actually got told by someone who we know, if I keep turning the way I am, I'll never be any good.
No good. What a lovely example of negative feedback fueling a desire to be the best. Judge for yourself. How is John's turning in this 2004 World Titles trick run?
The last world little comeback that I made, I knew halfway through that training process, sitting down the back straight there of Molonglo in the morning at 6, I was cold. Even though it was not a cold time of the year, I was cold and my body was hurting from days and days of practice. And I just knew this is too hard. Well, it costs more than playing footy, you know, it costs more than a pair of footy boots or whatever. You don't need to be coached non-stop every day, spending heaps of money on that. You don't need to go to every tournament around the country. You don't need to fly overseas to do all these things. You don't need to have the latest and greatest Kevlar, non-stretch, super line. You don't need all that stuff. So yeah, okay, if you get to do those things, it's an advantage, but you don't need to. I mean, I wanted to go when I was 16. I went in with my dad after a Nationals and said, look, these other guys are going overseas. If I want to make the team, I really need to go. And my dad just said, well, how are you going to eat? You know, you need a trade, you need to do something, you've got to be able to support yourself, and once you do that, you can go as much as you want.
And that he did. John went skiing as much as he could here at the Molonglo River to become one of the best.
I heard Greg Norman say, you know, being there on the last day in the hunt is what it's all about, what drives him, and I agree with that. Being good enough to really play at the top level was fun. So I'd like to think that I motivated some people to do some good things. I pushed them to a point where they might not have gone before. Maybe I'll be remembered as, you know, as the only other world champion outside of Wingy to do it. That might last a long time.
We had a long family history in water skiing, having learnt to water ski when I was just 4 years of age, and the whole family really having been involved for a long time. My brother was in the Brett Wing era, so he came second to Brett Wing for many years, but he won a gold medal at the first World Championship here in Canberra in 1978.
John Steckenberg, the final competitor in the men's tricks from Australia, making his entry into the course proper now. Greg?
Yes, he's coming in backwards.
After I guess many years of watching my brother, I ended up taking up the sport. I was a bit old when I got started, 14, 15, and then I sort of took over the reins as far as being on the Australian team. And then when I finally retired, in the last year that I competed, which was in 1998 when I won the World Championships, he was actually on the team again. So we've had a lot of years of Steckenberg representation on the Australian team.
The sister of the world's first barefoot waterskiing world champion, John Steckenberg, Sharon might have seemed destined for success, but it was only through Sharon's determination and hard work that she achieved the 1994 and 96 jump world champion titles and the 1998 world overall champion title.
Good skiing for Sharon.
So it really sort of grew, I guess, over time. It wasn't something that I just sort of got into and felt that I wanted to progress and do really well at. It was something that sort of grew over time. Oh, look, there's no doubt it's a tough sport on your body. It's really hard yakka. I remember one thing that my dad said to me that has always stuck with me, and it was one day when we were out training, and I was only pretty young, but it was cold and it was yucky weather and I really didn't want to be there. But anyway, at the end of the training session, Dad was pretty cranky with me because I hadn't given it 100%, and he said, you know, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it and go all the way, or don't worry about it. And I can understand and appreciate that now, given the commitment that's required from someone else, you know, to drive the boat and those sorts of things. My main role models were my brother, who obviously got me in the sport, and he really taught me how to train hard. And then probably the two people who I, you know, learnt a lot off would be Brett Sands and John Penney. So I think that having, you know, role models, female role models, is really helpful for girls. But, you know, there's not a whole lot of women who are involved in the sport, so it is hard to get them. And I've never thought of myself as being the most talented skier. I guess there's a level of talent there that can take you so far, but I think I was just prepared to work hard. You know, I didn't have a problem getting up in the morning. I loved training. I was prepared to do the extra things other than just skiing to try and get the best out of myself on the water. And I was lucky that in Canberra that I had the support of the ACT Academy of Sport. I hated toe turns. I really hated toe turns. And I couldn't do a toe up, too inflexible. Probably a flip was a hard trick for me. You know, I can remember one morning before the World Championships in '98, just going out. There was more than one morning, or a number of mornings, and I just remember one day just climbing in the back of the boat, just sitting on the back of the boat and putting my head down like this, thinking, what on earth am I doing wrong here? Because I just couldn't get it. And then as soon as I went away for the Australian team, Brett Sands just said one thing to me and I was right, and I didn't miss one after that. So I think that that desire to be able to, you know, skim across on your feet on the water is pretty exciting. You know, I chose to be involved in that sport and I loved it, and there weren't the financial rewards, but I wasn't in it for that. I was in it for the, you know, I guess for the personal things that you get out of it. It's actually the journey that you go on to get there that is actually probably the most rewarding thing, and the thing that I think that you carry over in your own personal life. I think I would like to be remembered hopefully as someone who was part of an era that took the sport to another level for women, and who wasn't just a good female skier, but someone who was a good skier. That was always really important to me. And hopefully a good person.
In one violent, twisting, painful motion, Gizella's outstanding career was brought to a halt.
I'm pretty lucky. There's very few sports that you can start competing at the age of 26 and then go on to represent your countries. I have not paid attention to the fact that this sport is a male-dominated sport, and in fact I aspire to try and catch up.
To become a world champion is impressive for any skier. For one who only took up the sport at the age of 26, it's extraordinary. Gizella Halasa's vibrant personality hides an ability and drive that are not to be underestimated. Originally from New South Wales, the move to the warm waters of Queensland was inevitable, but Gizzy still cherishes those early skiing memories.
The most memorable one is my first national championships. I think everyone recalls their first Australian championships as being a special championships. I came second in the women's 2 overall by 15 points, but I came second to Sharon Jones, who has been skiing probably since she was old enough to swim. So I was really chuffed by that I was able to come second to someone who'd been skiing for so long and skied so well. The second would have to be my Open Women's World Record run, which was actually at the US Western Regionals in Sacramento on Shortline Lake. And that was really special. It was my first feet-to-feet toe front in tournament. And that's something that I will remember as clear as day. Everything after that was a bonus. The 2004 Open Women's Overall and then the 2005 Senior Women's Overall. Holding both the Open and the Senior World's Overall title at the same time and winning the Open at the age of 38 is something pretty special. I think there's a big gap in the world records that the men are setting, the world records that the women are setting, and the women are basically at half pace to what the men are trekking at. I mean, the men are trekking now over 10,000 points. Look, at the end of the day, it's you out there skiing on your feet, it's you taking the falls. So if you're going to get yourself back up and have another go, then you know, you're showing some heart and you're showing some spirit. I think the other countries might say I'm annoying because I do like to cheer. It doesn't matter whether, you know, we're the underdogs or the favourites, whether there's a gold medal up for grabs or basically just a spot for the second round. And I think I've been very lucky with my injuries. I haven't suffered from pulled muscles on a regular basis, but I have had 4 big injuries that have all landed me in hospital. The first one being when I tripped in front of the jump and landed, or bounced rather, off the barefoot jump with my forehead, with my head. I had 2 lots of brain surgery. I had a fractured skull and 2 blood clots in the brain which had to be released and removed, and the other 3 injuries have all been shoulder related. When you're pushing the envelope and when you're talking world record type skiing and you want to be the best of the best, that's the risk you take. I like people to remember me as a competitor that was a clean skier, and also that's someone that enjoyed the sport for what it is. Australian junior team, Australian open team, Australian senior team, or just Joe Blow down the road who enjoys his barefooting, our door's always open, and we really do need to spread the wonderful news of our sport.
I love barefoot water skiing because it's just something new every time. It's just always learning.
It's ingrained into myself, and I to think about skiing is just as natural as to think about talking now. I think that's one of the reasons I managed to get pretty good at it.
Let that boat pull you, mate. Come up and let the boat pull you.
Every sporting culture has great characters, and for barefoot water skiing, you don't get any better than Peter O'Neill. Australian team coach, former junior world trick champion, multiple Australian champion, and all-round good guy. Peter O'Neill embodies the spirit of true champions. Peter, or Knackers as he is commonly referred to, has been there from the start as a junior to the sport. He is a true testament to the belief that coming up through the junior ranks can lead to great things. Seen here training many years ago in Liverpool, New South Wales, Peter's not forgotten how training with the best has helped to get him where he is today.
When I was 13, I made my first Australian team, and a guy called Sharon Steckenberg, who's one of the skiing greats. He was the first guy to win a world title, a trick world title at the Open World. He took me under his wing a little bit, taught me how to train, took me skiing a lot, like every winter, non-stop every winter. Mum and Dad, luckily enough, had a boat, and they took us skiing along with all my cousins. Pretty much Dad used to just cart me around skiing and go to tournaments and train, and just used to do as much skiing as possible.
Come up, straight up to 67.
Okay, straight to 67.
Pete's training schedule was demanding in more ways than one. Unlike the warmth of Sydney and Queensland, he trained in amongst the winter chills of country Victoria. Not only did this strengthen the natural resilience within Pete's character, but allowed him to develop a clear theory into the psychology of the sport, thus ensuring him success as a senior skier later in life.
From there, went on to make another junior Australian team and won a trick title there, which was amazing. Then started making open teams, and have made pretty much an open team ever since, both for the world titles and the Asian Australasian titles. Fast up to 71.
In 2004 at the Moala World Titles in front of his hometown crowd, this Ballarat Victorian barefooter qualified in the Open Men's Trick semi-final. One truly amazing feat. All those years of training were now coming down to 2 15-second ski passes.
So I'm more than happy with where I'm at. I think one of the things I've done since I've been injured is really thrown myself into the coaching side of the sport and tried to bring up some of our juniors, and I enjoy that immensely. It's added another aspect to my personality I didn't know was there, and I love that side of it. So I guess if I had to, I could find enjoyment just in that. Pass to 71 again, please. You want to back deep.
Pete's trick pass in 2004 gained him instant elite status in the Australian barefoot water skiing world. His run, consisting of multiple surface turns and line stepovers, had not been witnessed at that level since John Penney. Pete O'Neill had carved his name into Australian barefoot water skiing history as the #1 open division skier in the country.
When I started skiing with Stack, he sort of drove into me just how much you need to ski, and we'd go down and ski for we'd ski for an hour and do 15 jumps in a row and just do some amazing things that I don't even think I could do now. But at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons I got to the sort of top end of the pyramid was because I just used to do so much skiing. I wouldn't like to think that I was a good coach for starters. I don't think I'm any better than any other coach. I like to devote a little bit of time to it, and I've made an effort to learn how to be a better coach. I think that helps. Right? As I turn, I push down on it and turn. right? What you're doing is pushing on your left leg. And you're sliding your foot through the turn, which is sort of the old-fashioned way of turning. You barely find anyone in the world who turns like that anymore because it's hard work. One of the favourite things for me is some of the juniors that have gone through and still aren't involved in the sport are doing okay through life, like they've got jobs or they're working or they're making money. They're not bums, and that's important to me. Now, I'm assuming that you're all going to try and go to the Worlds regardless of whether or not you're on the team. Am I wrong in any spot there? Really, when we travel overseas and part of Australia, it's not like there's independents and there's the team skiers. Like, if you guys are independents, then it's not like you can't come up to me and ask for help. In fact, I'll still just be as helpful as I am to the team skiers. And there's 10 of you trying out for a team that they're only going to pick 4 on. Okay? So, 6 of you are going to miss out. It's pretty hard on the body, and it's hard physically and emotionally. Like, you get really emotionally tied up in the tricks you're doing, and when you miss them, especially because you miss them, when you don't just sort of fall off, you fall off hard and it hits you in the face, you get sort of a bit upset about it, so you need a good support group.
How many shots of me in the kitchen have you taken? Hey?
Pretty much all your shots.
Yeah, I live in the kitchen.
You have to take off the chain if you do the interview.
It's about time she did something though, isn't it? I mean, we've been slaving away for days now. I'm kidding. She's a great cook.
Ask anyone in the sport and they will tell you that one of Pete's greatest traits is his ability to have a laugh and a joke.
Play difficult shots that even they can't fathom. Luke today is playing a very tough shot. Hopefully he'll sink a ball.
Gregarious by nature when Pete is off the water, his infectious sense of humour is welcomed by all.
I like to live by my grandpa's motto that you don't ever get someone's respect, you got to earn it. And he always used to say it all the time actually, and it really stuck with me. And I don't think that by what I can do they respect me, and especially lately, some of these guys haven't even seen me ski, because of the nationals I was injured. So I think I've had to earn that by just being, friendly and fun, and the knowledge that I have hopefully comes forward and teaches them a trick, and hopefully that's how they learn to respect me. And, at the end of the day, if they do respect me, I guess they get more out of it, so I think that's what I'm after. I guess I'd like to be remembered as someone who was fun and friendly and put in, I guess. If I'm remembered as a good skier, then that'd be great. But what I do out on the water, can be limited by other factors. I think if I can put in all the time and, even if I just get remembered, I guess is a huge thing. Just to have someone in 10 years' time know that Pete O'Neill and to know who I was and that I won a national title would be cool. But I guess if in 10 years' time, there's a massive group of juniors, we've got an Australian team, at the forefront of barefooting, and I had something to do with it, that'd be enough for me.
In barefooting so far, I've got 2 firsts in this. No.
Okay, great.
In barefooting so far, I've got 2 Sorry,
that's
not very good at this.
It's 5 a.m, and while most teenagers won't even contemplate getting up for hours, these boys in Queensland are about to prepare for a morning ski training session on the Coomera River.
Let's try the other room. Stinks now. Come on, up. Breaking time.
In surfing, they'd be called grommets. In barefooting, they are the new school, the new breed of skiers destined to cement their names into the skiing record books.
Back up.
Like so many of Australia's talented youth, these young athletes commit more than just time to train. If it's not early nights and early morning training, it's the sacrifice of travelling during school holidays and weekends in order to train and improve at training camps.
Well, 9 years of tradition here anyway at this house. It's great to have people come in and ski here and use the facilities and hopefully improve the sport.
This Australian team training camp at Oxenford is a tradition that has laid the foundations for many world skiing greats. Champions such as Brenton Crouch, Brett New, Brendan Wright and Peter himself all went through this camp.
Yeah, the front to back's pretty hard, but it looks cool and it feels good and just one of the good tricks to look at. Yeah, I want to be trick champion. Oh, the trick I'm working on is the reverse front to back and back slalom 1 foot. Oh yeah, there's one injury when I was skiing on the 5 foot rope and I went to swing from the rope to the boom and jump in, and Dad was cornering in the inside corner and I jumped in, the boom snapped and I got winded and ambulance come got me and took me off. Chicks love it, show off in front of chicks.
In Queensland, so I ski for Queensland. Started skiing like 2 years ago. This is my second time on the Gold Coast for the training camp. Yeah, it's good because we're all learning basically the same thing, and good coaches and good to ski with and good fun. My favourite trick is front to back. It's probably the best show-off trick. It's good feeling.
I ski for New South Wales. Just really enjoy skiing. It's my 3rd time coming to this camp in Queensland. This week I'm learning to invert jump like the rest of the boys and do some surface turns like front to back, back to front. The hardest trick to learn would have to be just invert jumping. It's not really a trick, but it takes a lot of time on water to get it all good behind the boat. Motion straight up, like what I have to step up on to get to the world level is probably all parts of it, the jump, my slalom, my tricks, you know, to get to that stage. 5 years time, hopefully still skiing, going hard, probably going to some world championships or something like that, some open world championships.
I've been skiing for about 2 years now and I really enjoy it. Yeah, this is the first time training here at the Gold Coast. It's awesome fun, great guys to hang out with. The trick I'm working on this week is front to back on my feet.
Turn, they don't come in or out, they stay in. Okay, so they just go from there and they go onto your bum. I didn't bend it, I didn't straighten it, alright? What you always do, wait, alright, my back doesn't bend forward or back, alright? So that's first. Alright, cut it, Johnny.
5 years time, I see myself going to Worlds. I'd like to stand on the podium in Worlds and maybe Nationals. So yeah, that's my goal.
Yeah, hanging out with the boys and peeps for a week can be pretty good sometimes. Have a joke and that after skiing and out there having a bit of fun. This week at the camp I've been working on my toe turns and back slalom and jumping mainly. I've only had a couple injuries. I had a sprained neck once and a bit of a sore groin, that's about it.
The strength of all teams is collaboration, trust and belief. While training days are long and physically demanding, these talented young athletes must also maintain their own equipment, participate in team meetings, and study training videos. All this on top of earning a living. Team morale is an imperative part of ski team training, and while they may be well off the water, the boys not only live, sleep and train together, but also attend social functions to strengthen team relationships and team skills. An evening rock climbing session not only continues to physically challenge these talented boys, but reinforces the importance of team camaraderie and trust. As always, Peter O'Neill is there for the boys as mentor, coach and respected friend.
That's top deck too. Who's got sore arms? Sore arms? Sore back. Sore back. Yeah. Sore ball. I'm actually quite. I'm not sore at all.
Well, boys will be boys. And whilst the boys have come to the end of a long day at camp, the unique thing about a low-profile sport like this is there is no hotel chef, no dietitian, nor team masseuse. In fact, it's quite the opposite, but truly unique. The boys have fellow teammate, world champion and host Gizella Halasa cook up one of her homemade treats for them. This reinforces the strong foundations of the sport, the warmth and generosity of the people that make up the sport, and how infectious the personal experience is for the juniors coming through. Whether it be watching ski videos of their training from the day's events, having a meal together, or training in the boat, this new school breed of barefoot water skier is in safe hands.
Just be a bit careful, guys. Make sure you... How's it going, Sammy? Feeling alright?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm just going to rub that.
Should be alright.
He's got a shirt on.
Australia's juniors record is imposing. Since the inception of the Junior World Championships in 1991, Australia has placed either first, second or third in every year except 1997, putting Australia once again at the forefront of international competition. Some things in life never change. In barefoot water skiing, tradition dictates that skiers will always carry three traits: the irresistible urge to show off new tricks to friends, the desire to skim across glass-flat water at mind-boggling speeds, and the generosity to help other skiers out.
See them come from little cheeky teenagers to mature 16-year-old, how they change in 3 years and the way they think and the way they do things, and you really see them grow up. That's a good part of the whole system.
I just love the thrill of the compete. I love the waking up the day of the big event, the first day of the Nationals, which might be in the back of Victoria somewhere, no one's around, but it's the first day and you kind of think you're ready, you know you're ready, you just want to test yourself. But that also then goes to a final of a World Championship. You're sitting there, you know, and it's like, hey, I've got a chance to win this thing.
Well, the backwards start came about by accident. A day or two after I learned to barefoot forwards, I almost got tangled up and came out with the rope behind me, upside down, and then didn't tell anyone. It was a couple of years before anyone else worked out how to do it.
What drove me through all these hard falls and knocks, I guess, along the way was the fact that you wanted to win. I only look to do my best. If I do my best, then I'm happy with that. If I win, then that's a bonus.
I guess you got to always have the passion to be able to be a water skier, and I'm lucky that I've still got it. The long, hard road is probably one of the hardest bits about it, and you've just got to have focus and have a goal. You reach those goals if you want to.
The unwritten rule of barefoot water skiing is that cooperation is not just the key, but the heart and soul of the sport. It is the unique nature of the pursuit, the time and money, the injuries, the effort, and the graft that makes every barefoot water skier appreciate their fellows. They know from long experience that sometimes just getting out on the water can be one hard feat.